Hello, neighbor. What's up? So, this episode should definitely be coming out on Monday. The last episode didn't come out on Monday. Like, it was recorded on Monday, but it came out on Wednesday. And that happened because of network glitches and a whole lot of other things. Who else noticed? And I don't even release podcast episodes on Wednesday. But why did I have to release it? Because it's a commitment to you as much as it's to myself. You know, better, just getting something done is better than making it perfect. There's a way it actually goes. Like, done is better than perfect. Exactly. That's it. So that's really the motto this week. Just get it done. It doesn't have to be perfect. Get it released, put it out. That's it. You know, we're rocking that ship. So I have an announcement. And I think this might be exciting for many of us. I absolutely noticed that doing this podcast has been stressful. And I was like, why is it stressful all of a sudden? Why? There must be something I'm doing that is making it all stressful. And I finally figured it out. Remember, I've mentioned Stephanie Sue on this podcast before. She has a true crime podcast, and she recently has, established another podcast. Okay, it's 7-something episodes, so not that recent. Another podcast, Baking a Mother. And that one is more of fictional stories. I mean, her true crime is true crime. But then the other one is like fiction, maybe movies or novels or something. And the thing is, she's been telling stories for like 6 years, or a novel or something. So when you hear her talk, she's like talking for an hour long. And it's really interesting. And you're all hooked. And definitely, because as someone who's gone ahead of me, I wanted to copy that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Come on, it's only human. You want to copy someone who's gone ahead of you and it's killing it, I mean, she has like millions of subscribers and all. So, and thousands of reviews on Apple Podcasts and wherever, Spotify and co. Ratings and all that. So I really look up to her. And I noticed that when I was listening to her podcast, to be honest, I don't listen to her podcast all that much because even the fiction version, she chooses stories that have a really dark edge. So whenever I'm done with it, obviously I'm thinking about it for days. I'm like, how could they do that? Humanity is so dark. Like, she can tell stories that can stay on your mind for long. Like, you'd rather listen to her talk about a movie or a book than read it or watch it. She's that good. You get. So the thing is, she talks for a while. Like, one of the episodes she released recently is like over 2 hours. And the thing is, she doesn't seem to have a script. Maybe she has a point written down somewhere. She's just talking. Even the dialogue's line, and she's guessing all of it. I'm like, how in the world is she doing this? Is it juju? Do you understand? So I really want to be like her. And I know definitely it's practice. She's been on this for years. I'd always trying to copy her without really realizing I was copying her made me start extending the stories, right? Definitely some of the stories really needed extension, but some of the stories I could have been more succinct. I mean, the name of this podcast is Novels in Bits, not Novels in Whole. And I've been doing novels in whole, like bigs and big chunks, and that's why it's been draining. So I happened to see the script of episode number 3 of this podcast, like mini story. Who remembers mini story? You can just say hi. Hey, I remember mini story. I mean, it's a girl who the goats ate her flowers, right? A neighbor, that's how she remembers the story. And I feel so warmed that she actually remembers any part of it. That really stuck out for me. So thank you, neighbor. I'm so grateful. So either ways, that story, mini story, was so brief. That novel was about 800 pages long on phone. And honestly, the entire story, I told it in less than 3,000 words. And I was like, how did I do that? And I captured the soul of the book. I mean, but then I completely eliminated the side stories. That was why I was able to say after that story ended, hey, you can still go read it because you find a lot of surprises, because I was very succinct. So I'm going to do that for right now going forward, no matter how big a story is, unless it's maybe 5,000 pages long, and I'm not doing 5,000 pages yet. So no matter how big a story is, I would really keep it 2 episodes max and between 10 to 20 minutes. Like, I'm shortening this whole thing. I'm not Stephanie Sue yet. I don't have a big audience. Maybe when I have a big audience and there's a demand for the episodes to be longer, then we can do it. But until then, let's keep this novels in bits. So who loves this announcement? I think I love it. I feel like a whole lot. Since I got to this point, I've been like, oh, this feels really easy. Okay, so let's get into the final part of One for All. This would not have been the final part if I hadn't come to that revelation of let's keep this novels in bits. Okay, so let's finally finish One for All. I'm not going to do a recap today. Please, if you really don't want to maybe start from part A, like the beginning of the story, you can just start from part B. I feel like you even get it better from part B. Yeah. So part A is really cool too if you want to start from there, but you can just start from part B if you don't want to. But right now, this last part is the longest part because part A and B, I had crammed, I had over explained so many things, so it's bulky. But so this part C, I had to now be chop, right? So it's really long. It's longer than A or B, but I'll really try to keep it brief. And then episodes after today will be way much shorter. Okay? So please look forward to that. Part B ended at the part where somebody threatened the king, or rather a group of people threatened the king that they're going to overthrow his reign on the winter solstice. And the king, to show that he's not afraid and everything, he was still pushing forward with the celebrations that would happen around the winter solstice instead of calling it off and being on security alert and things like that. So now that, okay, the winter solstice is just like mere weeks away, like it's not so far. And that's putting a lot of pressure on every security operative, including the Musketeers, the order, yeah? So many of their missions after that day that the news came out that, this threat is out, it required them sneaking into places. There's guys that's maids or regular folk and stealing information. On one of the missions, Tia's target, who is Vedon's business partner, to get this context, please listen to part B. He trapped her alone in the garden hedge after lying to her that her friends were there. Portia and Tania ran after them. So Arya stayed behind to inform Madame of the development. Thankfully, no harm came to Thea because obviously this Vedon's business partner, they're suspecting him of also being part of people trying to overthrow the king, part of being the La Fronde team and trying to part of the traitors, yeah? So that's why he's Thea's target. Targets are usually men that might be behind scheming something against the king and against France potentially. So in either ways, this man, he tried to rape Thea, do something bad to her, and obviously he didn't do that, but definitely the incident shook up Thea. And because in the past there was a time she literally had to cut off part of a man's finger who was trying to force himself on her. Remember Henry? That is Madame's nephew. He started acting suspicious. Tania walked in on him at night in the training room because they have this room they train in. And he's like, Madame asked me to gather some notes for her. Tania was like, I don't know what to make of this. Another time, she saw him with beautiful sketches of birds and mid-flights. Apparently, whenever he's Oga, because he's an apprentice to a map maker, and his Oga is all these big men now. There's always debating an aesthetic value of the maps instead of really trying to gather the full picture of a map. He's just trying to only indicate pretty places in the map. So, and whenever he does that, Henry gets frustrated. Maybe he's debating with his colleagues. So, as a way for Henry to take out his frustration, he just sketches. And the frustration Henry is feeling that, why is this man only including pretty places in maps? Why doesn't he realize that when he meets villages, towns, and cities from these maps, they're raising them from public perception, and people there will not be considered as anything worthwhile, because if you are considered worthwhile, your place should show on the map, right? When Tania told the girls about Henry's behavior, Thea, who was distantly related to him and had known him from childhood, she was like, hey, I think Henry's just frustrated, might probably be overthinking this. We all are on an edge because of this danger to the king. So 2 weeks after her initial debut, remember, Tania debuted in Part B. Tania was finally assigned her own target, and he was none other than the son of Vedon. The funny thing is, Madame never intended that Tania would ever have her own target, because she just saw it as, she'll just probably be a backup for other girls. But then she saw Tanya's passion and resilience, and was like, okay, she actually deserves her own target. She's capable of this. So, and this target that they gave her is none other than the son of Vedon Senior. And this her target is none other than the son of Vedon Senior. Vedon Senior is the person who they chiefly suspect as the killer of Tanya's father, like the person who killed Tanya's father. The person that all evidence is pointing to is this guy, the bad guy. And it's her son that Tania is going to be trying to extract information from. So Tia was like, you're lucky that your target is young and he's not old. Madame was like, don't do that. That a young target doesn't mean lack of danger. Madame suspected that although this person, Tania's target, is not as influential as wealthier nobles, he must still have valuable information about his uncle that Tania must extract from him. His name was Etienne Verdon. It turned out to be none other than that same guy she met on her debut ball, that when she was sitting outside and receiving fresh air, the one that was all nice to her now. Etienne was handsome, popular among ladies at court, and smart. He was the sort who was overconfident, and Madame saw that trait as a weapon that could be used against him. Tania wasn't to let Etienne know her last name, and she was to make him chase her. So more or less like, oh, okay, he's just chasing this pretty girl, but he doesn't know her last name or where she's from. And Tania is supposed to not just make this guy like her, he's supposed to make him want her. Tania met Etienne again at the palace. So when they met now again, like besides that first time, and by this time Tania, she's more experienced, so she's more like okay in her element of spy, musketeer. And she's wearing this red dress. She's decked out in expensive gemstones. And, he's all like, oh my God, who is this girl of my dreams, okay? Also, she saw the king for the first time, Louis XIV. And Louis XIV, as of the timeline of this novel, this Louis XIV, he's older than Tania by a few months. So, like, Tania's age meant. So he's like 16 going on 17. In her eyes, he's just a boy with a crown. But this boy with a crown needed to keep wearing his crown, or many would die and suffer. And that's what she's fighting for. Staring at Etienne, it finally dawned on Tania, okay, now it clicks to me, we have heard the Verdon name. Because, she was just still thinking, oh, where have I heard Verdon? And it took everything in her not to react aggressively toward him. She confirmed, okay, he's indeed the son of her father's suspected murderer, Monsieur Hubert Verdon. She didn't tell him her surname or about her background. She decided to play it cool. They were talking and dancing. A man interrupted them. He wanted to call Etienne away on a business call that needed his urgent attention. Before he left, Etienne pressed a kiss on Tania's hand with his eyes locked on hers. And like, ugh, my God, so romantic. Just picture it. So, unfortunately for Tania, on the morning that she was supposed to train with Portia, her body wouldn't cooperate. She couldn't even get out of bed without feeling like she would collapse. She was frustrated and took it out on Portia, telling her that there was no day she was feeling better. She just pushed through the pain regardless. And the reason she told Portia this was Portia was like, but I thought you've been feeling better. And Tania is like, with my sickness, I don't have days I feel better. Just because I have some good days doesn't mean I'm better. This is always how this is. This is what it means to live with a chronic illness like mine. Don't you get it? Obviously they don't, but she's just like frustrated. But then instead of Tania, Portia to like get mad and all that, Portia was just calm and said, don't worry, we'll rest. You get. Obviously, Tania still apologized for talking to her like that, and she was thinking, oh, Portia is going to turn on me like Margaret and the village girls, but Portia didn't do that. So 2 days later, she was okay. She was having a better day, her body and all that, so she was able to spar with Portia. But the sparring brought heavy memories of training with Papa, and then she broke down in tears. Tania and Madame brought her to her office. And the thing is, Madame had expected Tania to break down since. But she's like, okay, I don't know why you felt the need to keep it all together, but I'm glad this is coming out, okay? And it doesn't matter even if you're breaking down like this, it still doesn't make you any less passionate, strong, and essential to the order. Then, overall, Etienne wasn't what Tania had expected. He wasn't a rake because they described him as handsome and always kind of seducing the court ladies. And so, obviously, he's really cocky, but he's like, not that person who's jumping around and a womanizer. And he's considerate, he's kind, he's sweet. It was a shame that his father was a chief suspect and they plot to harm the king. And the reason why his dad is a chief suspect, this Monsieur Hubert Verdon, is because he doesn't have a title. You get, they are rich, they are wealthy, and things like that, but they don't have titles. And if you've read English historical novels, and novels can be very stupid in terms of they don't have money, or maybe they're struggling financially, but they want their son to marry a daughter from a rich home that doesn't have a title. Maybe the person's father, the girl that they want their son to marry, has her father is a merchant that has plenty money. So they want the son to marry the girl so that he can obtain her dowry that will really be large. Do you understand? So titles is like a very big deal in Europe at that time. I think titles are still very big to people now, Seth. Personally, I don't have that much regard for it, but it's too cool to be like, oh, okay, you're this, you're that, okay. we've heard you. Moving on. Verdun was a person that sent an invite to Tanya's papa now. That time he traveled and then they now killed him at the road close to the Verdun's residence. But she's not like, okay, why did they kill Papa? Like, Papa was just somebody who was traveling to open fencing schools. He wasn't involved in any of this. Then Madame now told Tania Papa's secret. Initially, he had truly been retired as a musketeer, by Mama's father now, like her mom's father that has power, that not like that has had his daughter married a common person, retired Papa. But when La France sprung up that 2 years ago, he had been secretly reinstated as a musketeer. So he had been like a spy. He was gathering information on the people that were plotting to overthrow the king. Madame de Treville knew all this because he told her about it when he'd written that letter to her, asking her to take in Tania in case he suddenly died. Because being a spy, obviously some people knows who you are and what you do, and they're out to get you. So Papa's death was tied to Tanya's current mission, which is discovering the names of those plotting against the king. Finding these guys and bringing them down would be fulfilling what her father had started. You get? So that really gave Tania much strength of her to really continue on this mission, because this was what her dad was doing that got him killed. So now she has to finish it for him. Okay? So sometime afterwards, Etienne sent a letter inviting Tania and the girls for the grand opening of a theatre. He wanted to use the avenue to spend time with Tania, get to know her a little better. In replying to his letter, Madame was specific. Ladies, take notes. Madame was specific on the words Tania was to use. Since the event was 3 evenings away, she would write that she had other engagements and it's such short notice, but yeah, well, I would, in quote, make time, that's how a lady answered. So at the theater, they were having a good time, but Tania felt dizzy, she's living with it, and sometimes it can be more intense. And Etienne is like, okay, let's go out on a quick stroll for fresh air. So Tania learned that Etienne and his father, they do not have a good relationship, and it showed in his expression, because it was hardened whenever someone around him mentioned his father. She asked more questions on the surface. It seemed to no cures, but it's the kind of questions that you have to really be listening to really get something. Okay, soon there was a ruckus in the theater, an attack. Like, there was a sound inside. So Etienne was like, they excused himself to sort it out. And the girls now gathered together. They suspected that the theater opening had been a cover for whatever oppression was going in that evening. Okay, so they went after the attackers. The girls, 2 girls pursued one person. Tania saw someone else pursued him, and in the process of chasing after him, she had to climb this rope that the man had climbed to get on the roof. As Tania was climbing the rope caught, and then the thing sent her falling. Like, imagine falling from a roof, like a tall place. And luckily, she grabbed the roof's edge. Her entire body was now burning, her fingers, her arms, everything. And so the girls saw her. They were like, hold on, hang on, let's go get a ladder. But as the girls were still ran off to get the ladder, Tania fell. But Thea luckily caught her. Tiny, small Thea. She's stronger than we think. But Thea still sustained a few injuries in the process. You caught someone that fell from it, quite a distance. So their next mission was at the dock. They were there to confirm if indeed weapons were arriving in France on that night, because Etienne had slipped to Tania that his uncle's ship was making ports. Remember what I said, that she was asking innocent questions, but he was unknowingly dropping hints. Okay, that's the way a spy works. You don't ask directly, just innocent questions enough, but they will just slip like, oh, okay, I have this, I have that, and that could prove to be a big deal. So one of the things he had told her is, oh, my uncle's ship is making port tonight. The uncle that is working with that business partner that tried to rape Tia now. So they waited a long time at that port. Then Arya and Tania, they snuck on the ship. And while Tia distracted the men, because she has to distract the men now for Arya and Tania to get on the boat. They just dressed and said, oh, this fell. Okay. So there, they started recording what was in the wooden slats. They had this parchment and something that equals to a pen today. Just like, okay, this is here, this is here. Then Arya pried open one of the wooden slats, more of like a crate, a container or sort. On top were boats of fabric. But then there were weapons hidden underneath. Meanwhile, soon the men came and they had to hide behind some of the crates. And then that particular crate they had opened, when the men were taking it down, one of the men, it fell into the water. Because it's open now, and bolts of fabric fell in. Some floated, but those that they wrapped weapons with sank, obviously, because weapons are heavy. So Tania noticed a piece of paper among the things that fell into the water. So she was like, this might be important. So she now tried to reach for it. That's when someone saw her. But she was still able to snatch the paper. They now give them hot chase. So her and Arya decided to split as they were running and meet up at a nearby bar, the Gryphon. Please take note of that bar again, the Gryphon. That's where they wanted to meet up at, that bar. So Arya and Tania, they were dressed as men. And when Tania was eventually cornered by one of the gentlemen, thinking that, oh, who's this boy that is trying to find something against us, Tania had to deepen her voice. She thrust out her chest to look like a man. The man underestimated her. I think he had to be a brave boy. And he was like, I promise you, your corpse, this, that, and all those threats. Then they fought. Tania was dizzy, as usual. But her body knew this dance because she trains a lot, yeah? And eventually she stabbed him in the side. Arya found her then because she was just still shaking. Have I really just stabbed a man? They left that place. Later, Madame informed the girls that all that was needed now was evidence that connected these weapons. Okay, now they found the weapons. Then we now need evidence that would really prove, okay, these weapons belong to these nobles so that arrests could be made. Arya wondered, how is it that this man had even seen us because we were sticking around so well? Tanya was like, oh, it's because of me. I actually saw this paper drop and it's not even important and I risked everybody and she's feeling bad. And Madame took the paper from her and read through and then she now beamed and was like, no, this paper is actually really important. It's a code, right? It could really be that evidence they need to connect the novels to Joe's weapons and end the whole thing, okay? So trying to crack the code was tough. Even Henry had to help. When the girls went to fetch some cryptography textbooks at the University of Paris, it was specifically Tiesha who went in, but Arya and Tanya were just around. Then Tanya, she ran into Athenian and then his father, Monsieur Verdon. You get, at this time, even when because she ran into Athenian first, then Arya just excused them. You get, it's a public place now. It's not like you need a chaperone to be just behind you. So, and while they were talking, his dad came, the Monsieur Verdon, that papa's murderer, whom Tanya needed evidence to lock away. He came to take Etienne home to see his sick mother. Monsieur Verdon was so aloof, cold and distant. He had this condescending aura, which fit a murderer. Tanya noted that he moved quietly. Obviously, now this is someone that is your father's murderer. Yeah, you are noticing every single thing. And this man, he has this quiet way of moving that could have made it possible for him to sneak up on her father. That night, there was an intruder who stole papers from Madame's office. It was a masked figure, dressed in black, and he purposely distorted his voice when he spoke. He spread a substance that induced coughing and dizziness, but not before letting a lock of blonde hair fall out from his head cover. It was the color of Henry's hair. Arya was the only one who heard this semi-quiet ruckus and woke up. When she spoke of how the thief could have broken in, she was thorough. She was like, he could have used the windows, he could have done this, could have done that. And the thing was not making Tanya wonder, how would you know how a thief will come in? What kind of life did you live before the other? Because this is somebody that is the daughter of a wealthy noble. So how do you know a lot about poverty and thievery? That's when Arya finally told her. And the only person who knows Arya's story is Porthia. Madame and Thea, they don't know. So Arya lived in the poorest part of the city, a place known as La Cause des Miracles. I say, leave me on these French words. So anyhow, it's the poorest part of the city. She grew up there with her mother, but her mother died a few weeks before she turned 10 from consumption. I think today that illness is called tuberculosis. After her mom died, Arya had to pickpockets and she got cocky, learned how to pick locks, and then sneaking into places to steal big. And then she now finally decided to go for that one big last mission that would kind of ensure she lived a relatively comfortable life. She now targeted this house on one of France's most expensive living areas. And the thing is, she took her time. For weeks, she would examine the house, walk past it every day, observe, things like that. She came up with a plan. Then on the night of her plot, to tell you that she's a very sensible thief, or rather she was a very sensible thief, all she did was carry a pillowcase. Anything that can enter a pillowcase was what she was just carrying. But on her way out, a man had stopped her. And this man was like, there's a painting in my office, so that if you carried it and you sell it well, you will be comfortable the rest of your life. So she ended up sitting opposite this man and chatting all night long. And this man was the man of the house. And Arya had never had a father. And this man of the house that she had come to rob his house, he's been living in grief because he lost his daughter, and his daughter would have been Arya's age. So he offered to adopt Arya. He raised her as a noble girl, gave her the identity of his daughter. And why that was possible is the man, in quotes, is kind of like a recluse. He hardly goes out into public society. So people didn't even know he had a daughter who died. So Arya assumed the identity of the man's daughter, and that's her name now, Arya. But she used to be Danielle, a poor orphan. So she has the most interesting backstory, really. After this revelation, Arya asked Tania a difficult thing. Like, can you not tell anyone that there was an intruder tonight? That, say, you'll not be helping. Tia would just have more nightmares. Like the youngest girl now. That one, yeah, she's strong, but then she's still young. So something scare her. Like, when they first had that, that someone left a blood warning on the king's mirror. Thea was like, I hope they didn't kill someone to do that. Then, Madame had to be like, don't worry, just animal blood. But that was actually human blood. They just thought, they tried to protect her sensibilities. Thea can be brutal. Towards the end of this book, she hit somebody so hard, beat a man up so thoroughly, one of the men who tried to rape her, so that the man died from the injuries and she was satisfied. This Thea. But at the same time, she's someone that, she's young, so you're trying to protect her sensibilities, that sort of thing. Okay, so just said, don't tell them about the intruder, because Thea will only suffer nightmares, and poor Thea, she's not already sleeping well, so you just make her sleep worse. As for Madame, Madame still has this snobbish qualities, despite all her talk of womanhood and strength. The only reason why Arya was in her school was because she thought Arya's father trained her, but she had learned that maybe Arya used to be this poor girl, maybe Arya would not even be in her school. And look at the thing, why Madame had learned to fight out of, I wanted to be Musketeer, is the only thing I ever wanted. She's still a rich girl, yeah, Madame. But Arya learned to fight, not out of passion, but out of survival. Arya is somebody that, she's just very secretive and things like that. And we'll see how that goes for her. Because her secretive can annoy, it can rankle but it also helps. So either way, there are always two sides of a coin. So that intruder, Arya suspected that is an insider, because she felt that the dock workers, that time they went to the dock for a mission, she felt that those people had been tipped off. She suspected Madame might secretly be working with the very nobles they were trying to discover, or it might be Henry. Remember that golden hair that peeked out? Henry's hair is golden, brown, and, Henry has been acting suspicious. So they're like, okay, Henry. Arya is convinced, is ready to paint anybody as a target. She's someone that she does this so coldly. But obviously, Tania is still more of the emotional one. And she's like, but Henry is kind and he doesn't really fit the act. Well, we'll see.